Okay, my name is Kathy Terrell. I'm with the Lake County Master Gardeners, and we are part of Ohio State University Extension, who is bringing you this program today. Let's see if I got the right coding here. Anyway, this is the ohioline.osu.edu. It's a good resource for any plant-based information or agricultural-based information. And I do have a resource page at the end of the talk, so that will appear again. Our main offices are in Paynesville in the square, 105 Main Street, and we do have our hotline running now, April through October, on Tuesdays only from 9 to 11, and it is the same number as the office number. And today's presentation is Plants for Winter Interest. We have created this presentation with the idea that you don't want to be, it's an objective for most gardeners to be, have a good garden year, not just a one-hit wonder, so to speak. We don't want to just garden in the summer or garden in the spring. We want to have our gardening calendar throughout the year. So with that, this presentation hopefully will interest you in becoming a year-round gardener instead of just the typical season of spring, summer, and now we're stretching into fall. And hopefully you'll learn a few plant ideas. So we start off all gung-ho in the spring with lots of information and lots of plants. And we are very excited because it's been a long, cold winter usually around here, and we want to get started. We're very anxious. And then summer comes along with bugs, diseases. This year we had a lot of drought, so we were pulling their hoses trying to keep plants alive, and not even just to keep them alive, not even just to make them beautiful. And then fall comes with a lot of with all its glory. We maybe won't see the leaf colors this year that we have in the past due to our drought situation, but it's a time of harvest and things slowing down. Plants are going on sale at garden centers. It's a good time to still plant plants in the fall. The daylight hours are definitely getting shorter. We're losing so many minutes a day, and the temperatures are now getting cooler too. So with that in mind, we're going into winter, which is our next season. But you might think there's not so much to see out your window in the wintertime, but I challenge you to think a little bit differently. We're going to take a closer look at some of the plants that provide interest in the fourth season, in the winter season. So wintertime beauty is all around. Take a look at this picture. We see the grasses standing. They're adding structural interest. The pines, the beautiful structure of the deciduous tree in the front up against the blue sky. And it's covered with snow on the bottom. So there is beauty all around. You have to just train your eye to look for some of the beauty that we do find in nature. And we're going to start with trees because they are the backbones of the garden. And some of the trees that I have here, you might not be familiar with, but they do add interest. And we're going to take a look at, they add interest with the structure, and they also add interest with the bark. So with this one, we have the lacebark pine, I'm sorry, not the palms would not do so good here, but the pines would. And it does have a camouflage look to it, just like this Chinese elm does. And the next one we have is the Cornus cusa, the cusa dogwood, which really does have interest. I mean, instead of just looking at the bare trunk of trees, think about trees that you could add to your garden to create some interest with the barks. Cherry trees have, I'm sorry, this is a striped bark. This is a maple, sort of like Japanese maple, because a lot of those trees do get stripy as they get older. So, so there's, texture in that. We have cherry trees, which are smooth and shiny bark. Just a whole lot. And this was at Holden Arboretum. This picture, I didn't take this picture, but this was at Holden Arboretum. And then we have a tree that a lot of people aren't familiar with. It's called the Franklina tree, named for Benjamin Franklin. And it's the only tree that is not found in the wild today, but is commercialized, and you can buy them a lot of places. And they do have beautiful white blooms in the spring and healthy foliage until fall, when they have this nice kind of dark stripy bark. So that's the Franklinia tree, or the Franklin tree. And then we come in with the maple, the paperbark maple with the kind of shedding. It looks like the branches or the trunks are kind of shedding, and it's just a kind of a cool look on the yellow birches. And all the birches have some special interests with habit, whether they're single stemmed or multiple stemmed or branching. But their bark is very interesting. So whether it's a yellow birch, a white birch, clumping structures, the river birch is more of a clumping structure. So yeah, I mean, we have so many options, and we want you to think about that a little bit when you're choosing your plants. No, don't just choose them for your spring or summer bloom. Fall foliage is one thing you want to think about too, what the color, but then winter interest with the way the plants behave or look in the winter light. So this is more pictures of river birch, and they are providing a lot of structure, but they can also provide structure in the form of an alley, which it's beautiful if you've ever seen. I've seen a few of them around, and they are really quite intense. But you don't really think about those things when I mean, we have smaller properties, but you could still create a form like this. I know Penitentiary Glen has a little alley. The kids love to play under that. So you could create something like that in your own yard. More pictures of the birch because they just stand out against the winter, especially if we don't have snow. And the last couple of years, we haven't had a lot of snow cover. So you want to try to find plant material that will create interest, whether there's snow or whether there's not snow. Our next one is the dawn redwood. This is the metasequoia. It was thought to be extinct until about 1940 when it came back, and we found it again, and they've been commercializing it. And this is not to be confused with I have another picture of the bald cypress, which is the one that has the knobby knees in the south. This is a deciduous pine, so it will drop its needles, and it does that every fall. It turns yellow, a flaming yellow color. It's a native to China. We have the staghorn sumac here, which you can see like the red velvet on the tips, which a lot of the native peoples actually used to eat the velvet of the staghorn sumac. But it's just another interesting thing to look out your window at in the wintertime. This picture is on Garfield Street in Mentor. These are sycamore trees. They also had that camouflage looking bark, and it almost does look like an alley because they're planted on both sides. I know our last couple of tornadoes did take out some of these big structure trees, but there's still quite a few of them left, and they're really beautiful to see. This is a bald cypress. And this is the one that's more native to southeastern United States, even though our ranges are getting, we've already revised our ranges in Ohio in the last 2 years. So it's a water-loving tree, though, and these are the ones that grow with the knobby knees that you'll see in the swamps in the south. But here they will do pretty well, too. They have moved their range up to southern Ohio, at least. This is the tupelo, or the black gum. It's a beautiful tree. It has beautiful red leaves in the fall. It's very straight structure and very nice branching on it. So yeah, we want to think about those basic trees that we can plant that add some beauty, sort of like that. When the branches catch the snow, there is beauty on the bare branches too. Next, we're going to go to evergreens, a group of plants called evergreens, which are kind of the star of the winter landscape. Holly trees. This is at the Mormon Temple in Kirtland. This is a holly bush, if you can believe, and it actually has turned into a tree. It takes a long time for that to happen, but American holly is a slow grower, and but it can grow to 40 to 60 feet tall, which I guess that's probably what that one at the temple is, because it's been there a long time. English holly is a little smaller and slower growing, but the American holly can and does, instead of just growing as a shrub, it can grow as a tree if you let the leaders go. We also have the blue spruce in this group, which everybody knows that one, I think. Austrian pines, there's quite a few different kinds of pines and evergreens that we may not be familiar with. Some of them really look like this looks beautiful out in a big landscape. It's a big growing tree. drive through the Arboretum sometime in the winter. Take a look at their conifer collection. It's beautiful. And that might give you an idea too of like what else you can plant in your garden for the winter. This is called Pinus flexus, but its common name is limber pine, and it grows very tall and stately. So yeah, it might not be for all of our yards, but it's one that definitely shows up in the landscape. One that we could all use in our yard is a mugo pine because they are very short. And I've had one probably for about 25 years that I have kept kind of like in a ball, which is how I bought it. I wanted it for that form. And with pruning, you could keep them as short or let them go tall. But the mugo pine can fit in even the smallest of landscapes. The Japanese black pine is beautiful here. It's kind of got that golden look to it, and something that we don't use a lot in our landscapes. Dragon eye pine, it's named so because of the needles. They have that gold inflection on them, and it's stunning. It's from a distance. Let's see if I can go back. See if that'll go back. Oh no, it went forward. But it just looks like a reflection of yellow when you're looking at the pine. That's usually the dragon eye pine. Like I said, the arboretums are always great places to look for, to see the adult structure, full-size trees, because when you buy a tree, you look at the tree and you go, wow, that tree could go to 30 to 40 feet, and I can't fit that tree in my yard. So think about that when you're evaluating trees for your winter landscape. But maybe the weeping hemlock. I have had hemlocks in my yard, not the weeping form, but I've had them since before I bought my house, when I've been in it for about 40 years now. So hemlocks can be kept smaller. If you let them go, they can also get very tall. So depending on your commitment to pruning these trees, they can also get out of control. But here's the hemlock cones. And I get these on my trees. Right now they're already getting cones on the trees. And they're sweet, just little, tiny little inch-long cones. So they're not going to fall and hurt anybody, but they're close to the house. Other interests are the whole group of the false pines or chamaecypress are beautiful. I mean, they come in tree form. They come in shrub form. They can grow, as you'll see them, as gold thread needle leaf. Here's another one that is the pendula, which just means that it's hanging down. It's like a pendulum would be swinging. So there's a whole host of plants in the chamaecypress evergreen family, various forms, upright, bush type, tree type. Don't forget the boxwood. The boxwood can and does do well here. It's very deer resistant and can add a lot of interest in the winter, whether you keep it naturalized, like this is a naturalized one. Maybe you're more familiar with people are pruning the boxwood into balls or globes or pyramids or whatever. But the boxwoods, they have had some problems with blight and disease, but they have been treated successfully, and as long as you can know the proper pruning techniques to keep them, use clean pruning shears, clean after every shrub, usually they don't have too many problems. I have a whole host of boxwood, different sizes and types, and I haven't had disease so far. I don't want to jinx myself, but keep watching. But the new boxwoods are more disease resistant than the old ones we have been familiar with. So we want to just create some interest, whether it's using one of these shrubs or two, or just the whole grouping in itself. But look at, just the standing out against the snow is the pines and the cypress and things like that. But look at in the background, standing out against the blue sky, is the white bark of the river birch, or one of those that have the white bark. So anyway, so those are things we want you to keep in mind. We're going to move along to some of the smaller trees and shrubs, like the rhododendrons. This is a kind of a stressful looking rhododendron, because what happens in the wintertime, the colder the temperatures, the drier the soils get, they do go into a stress looking situation. but they do revive themselves come winter snows or spring showers. But they are also evergreen, so they will, hold their color all winter long. Another something to look out your window and see in the middle of our drab winter days. Here's another one you might not have heard of. It's a variegated Lakothi, and it's very easy to find these around here. You just have to kind of look for them, at the garden centers. And a lot of the garden centers are now working on clearancing their stock out. So you might not find the ones you want. If there's something specific, you might have to wait till spring. So if you wanted this Lakothi and you can't find it, but it is here and it does grow very well. It stays a smallish subshrub and it has some yellows and green in it there, and it also does bloom in the early spring with some yellow white. So there's at least 3 or 4 seasons of interest to that shrub, which is what we want to do with our plants. We don't want them to just, we do want to plant a variety of things so that we are going from spring with all of its beauty, summer with the glorious, dahlias, going into fall with the mums, and then winter. We want you to think about winter as a 4th season for plants, because it is. And with a little planning and foresight, you can still have beauty in the winter time. Our next subshrub it's a small tree, is Stewardia, but the pictures here are very nice because she also shows the Stewardia seed pods, which hang on all winter. The birds like to eat the berries that come out of there, sort of like right now. If you have little dogwoods, even your Japanese maples all have berries and seeds on them, and the birds now are flocking to them, along with other the animals that are still here, like the hummingbirds and the butterflies, are still going after nectar sources. Last year, I think it was the middle of October when I saw the last hummingbird in my garden. So think about those kind of things for winter interest too, not only for yourself, but for the creatures that these things support. Serviceberry, it's a nice clumping looking, very natural looking format, stays smaller. Smaller meaning maybe 15 feet, and it does have berries in the spring, and it just looks beautiful all winter long. The next one, this Washington hawthorn, it's probably hard to see with the lights up a little bit. I don't know. It's got red berries on it, and they're heavily used for Christmas time. Instead, if you don't have poinsettias, you can cut those berries and use them in your wreaths and in your arrangements. The only thing is they do have thorns, and I know there was a whole bunch of them planted at a Lake Metro Park not too far from my house, and the maintenance guys hated them because the thorns of these hawthorns are quite deadly. They are coming out with varieties that are thornless, or if you could plant it inside of a bed instead of inside of the lawn, that might be a better use for this tree to prevent you from being injured with the thorns, because just a word of caution on that. Or even if you're not harvesting those berries, they look beautiful in the winter landscape. Magnolias. Magnolias come in many different colors now. They've hybridized them quite a bit with the large leaves and the large buds. And in the winter, once those leaves drop, you'll notice the magnolia buds start getting really hard and firm. It's just another something to see out your windows. Along with this one, it's called Turkish filbert. The catkins, these are the seed pods, and they'll hang on all winter. And maybe one that you're more familiar with besides the Turkish filbert is this one called Harry Lauder's walking stick. It's called a contorted version of a filbert because the sticks are great for like flower arranging. They're all contorted and twisted, but they do also get these catkins that hang, and they'll hang in the winter when there's not a lot else to look at out there. So it's also called Corealis contorta or contorted filbert, Harry Lauder's walking stick. You'll find it by those names. That's a common one. It'll be easily found in most garden centers, but it adds a lot of interest. What about the dogwoods, the red twig dogwoods? And we're not talking about the blooming dogwoods, the tree dogwoods. We're talking about the bush dogwoods. Those red twigs add a lot of interest and color in the winter landscape. Then the yellow twig dogwood, also beautiful for naturalizing an area or in your yard. Naturalize if you're naturalizing an area backing up to woods or something. Now they are kind of prone to a little bit of deer browse, depending on how many deer you do get through. But they do plant them in natural areas and parks, and because they're beautiful, and they do create interest all winter long. Now, this witch hazel may be something you're not too familiar with, but it's a very beautiful plant. And actually, one of Lake County's own, I think his name was Tim Brasman. I don't know if it was Tim or I think it was Tim. I have his book. I should have looked up the first name. But he actually hybridized many of these witch hazels. So there are now many different colors and forms. There's trees, there's shrubs. They come in, they bloom from October to March. The native ones are more prone to blooming in the fall, but the more hybridized ones are more prone to blooming in the spring. But they are beautiful up against, if you've got the sun coming behind them, maybe in the western end of your garden, or just looking at your front window as the sun hits one of them. It's a subshrub, basically. Most of them can be subshrubs. There are some that are trees. The ones that I have on these pictures are mostly shrubs. And I know that you can still go out to Brosman's Nursery. It's on Chapel Road in Madison, right? Isn't that Madison? And you can, online, they do set up tours. We've had tours there, and it's a very interesting place. You'll see some plants out there in their full grown glory, which, maybe we'll never see in our gardens, but he has hybridized. And so we had yellows, and there's a little bit closer picture. So before anything, there's still snow on the ground. You're still seeing something blooming out there. And it does have a bit of a fragrance too. If you're outside in the winter, you will notice a fragrance coming off of the witch hazel. There are even orange varieties of witch hazel. He's got quite a few red varieties and orange varieties that you can find at garden centers. The next one is euonymus. It's also called spindle tree. It's a smaller sub tree, but it does have great fall color and fruits, and the birds do eat these fruits, which most trees that fruit, birds are going to eat. So I hope that's not a problem for you. Japanese maple bark. Look at how pretty that is. Not all of the barks are that way, but I have a red bark one like this, and it's beautiful against it depends on your backdrop, but if you're looking at it, I have a green garden shed in the back, and it stands out against that green garden shed, as it does here against the other colors of the browns or the blues of the sky. So some of them have yellow bark, some of them have brown bark. So when you shop for your plants, look for that kind of things that you might want to create color in your garden in the winter, in the off season. We've got here more of the red bark color of a Japanese maple. And then the next picture is we've got some crab apples that they've espaliered on a garden fence. And that actually is a whole nother thing. I mean, not everybody has a fence they want to grow vines on, but why not take advantage of those, horizontal? It doesn't have to be a crab apple. It could be something else, but it does add interest when you see not just the bare fence, but perhaps a vine with some seed heads growing along the vine. Don't forget the grasses, the weeds, or the seed pods that you want to plant, because those also add interest for our winter enjoyment. Like the hydrangeas, like this Annabelle hydrangea. You can leave those on all winter, and then actually what happens sometimes is the winds break them off, or you can prune them off in March. You could cut some of the varieties, you can cut all the way down. You have to know which hydrangea you have to cut it or not to cut it. Some bloom on old wood, some bloom on new wood. So you just have to research your hydrangea a little bit to know. The Annabelle, you can cut to the ground, they say, every 3 to 5 years if it's getting too big. And I have a little one, but I know people that have huge ones, and they do cut theirs back. So depending on where it is. But, just another thing, if you're leaving the seed heads on, which I know most of my friends and neighbors don't, because we bring them in the house for dried arrangements for winter time. I just harvested some of mine and threw out the old ones, because they do lose their color over time. But they're beautiful. If you have enough to leave on, like this is the hydrangea tardiva, which is the panicle hydrangea, which you can prune late in the winter. You can take those seed heads off of there now. And then the grass is standing right next to them. Another point of something to look at out your window, not just the snow or not just an evergreen. And then when the harvest, the harbinger of spring is the pussy willow. So that blooms quite early in the season also. So you might see those blooming and go, wow, spring is on its way. So it's just kind of a fun thing to grow some of these other varieties of things. Now, there's also the giant grasses, which these are giant. I've seen some out here in Madison. I don't see them too often, like where I live in Mentor. We're more congested and not as big of plots, but they are awesome looking. And these I did see, these are in Fairport Harbor, up along the lake. And you can leave them all winter, and I suggest you do. But I do want to caution you, you might maybe want to get out there in February, because what will happen is these grasses will break down and then they'll go everywhere and your neighbors will not be happy with you. But look at I don't always understand. Sometimes people cut them down now. Why? They're just beautiful right now. Mine are just seeded. They got their seed pods, their seed heads on them, and I enjoy them all winter. They'll get snow on them in the winter and they'll still beautiful. I will clean them out on a good February day. I'll get my hedge trimmers out there and cut them down. But they just add a lot to the fall and winter landscape. This is a naturalized planting of the grasses. And here's a planting in front of like a suburban house. So yeah, you can add them wherever you'd like. It adds some, it looks like a great thing for fall going into winter. And like I said, you can keep them all winter, but just, be mindful of your neighbors if you don't want them blowing all over your neighborhood, because that's kind of what happens. We do have dwarf grasses that are beautiful. They're the little variety that stay about 2 feet. They don't get up to 5 or 6, or the giant miscanthus that we saw earlier in the slideshow. But they are beautiful. My neighbor has a lot of these, the dwarf grasses. They just stay really nice all winter long. And then don't forget about the seed pods, like common milkweed. How cool are those to look at? If you have a place that you can support, a natural or a native area, the milkweed, we all know, is the host plant for the monarch butterfly, which I saw a couple yesterday before, because it wasn't too rainy yesterday, at least where I live in Mentor. I know it's been hit and miss all over the city of Cleveland, but the milkweed, they do break down in the spring. We used to, when I worked with the Metro Parks, we did children's programs. We'd take those pods and the seeds would fly away. They were just so downy and soft. The kids would like to rub them up against their cheeks. And we did a program. Native peoples used to use those to like calm the babies and, clean their behinds and stuff. But the common milkweed pods are beautiful, a beautiful thing to look at in the winter landscape. What about your autumn joy sedums? The saying is now to leave on save the stems, leave the leaves, is how the saying goes, because a lot of our little creatures, the insects and bugs amongst our garden, the favorable ones, we also get the unfavorable ones, but they use those stems and the leaf litter to winter over in. So I leave them on until they look really bad or they start breaking down. So autumn joy sedum is another just a beautiful thing that you can look at through the course of the winter. The seed heads of flowers are really interesting too, like the rudbeckias or the coneflowers, which the birds are loving. They're eating all those things right now in our yards. This is a picture of variegated yucca with the seed pods still on them, coming right through the snow. Those are very hardy plants. My friend of mine inherited a cottage from her aunt, and it's been a dozen or so years, she can't get rid of the things. You almost have to take a machete to them, and they keep coming back. So remember, be cautious where you plant some of these plants. Ivies, the helixes, these are like the the ground covers, but some of these ground covers do climb up structures, like we were talking earlier about kudzu and things in the south. But we have the ivies here, which I always caution people, they can take over, but you also can keep things curtailed a little bit, with a little bit of work, so that they don't take over the trees, etc. But these are the ivies and the ground covers. We also have the Christmas ferns and the other ferns that kind of start popping out of the ground even in the snow. The heucheras, which will hold their color. Some of them are yellows or purples, or even oranges, but some of them will hold their color all winter, and then their seed heads will start growing early in the spring. The hellebores are a whole nother thing. There's so many different hellebores. Holden has quite a diverse selection of hellebores there. They are beautiful. They will be poking their heads out of the ground in the middle of winter. Here's one poking its way through the leaf litter, and here's the buds. They come in reds and pinks and yellows, and kind of a whitish yellow. So they are something that you will see. It's like one of the first signs of spring. Lenten rose is sometimes called, but hellebore is the botanical name. Allegheny Pachysandra. This isn't the non-native. This is the native Pachysandra, and it does. Our regular Pachysandra is fine too. I think all plants have their spot, but we are promoting a lot of natives. So this is the Allegheny Pachysandra, which stays green all winter. It's just sort of like our common Pachysandra. And then we have the ginger, European ginger, and the American ginger. They are beautiful, shiny, roundish leaves, and I have been acquiring some of these from some other my fellow master gardeners. So I have a little area in my yard that the wild gingers come out and stay all season for me. But they're really early emergence in the spring through the snow. You'll see it on the ground, sort of like the skunk cabbage. If you go hiking in the woods and you see skunk cabbage, it comes out. It's an early emergent, even through the snow, and it does stink. That's why the name is the skunk cabbage. But it's just one other thing of beauty in the winter landscape. This is the American ginger. It's more heart-shaped leaves, and it's a little bit larger. I'm not saying, I mean, a lot of us think, oh, it's got to be native, but it doesn't. There are so many different beautiful plants out there. So just don't limit yourself to natives alone. Partridge berry is a very low grower, but it does have red berries when you're looking for some interest in the wintertime. And it likes to be in kind of shady areas, so it'll be good under the trees. And the other one is variegated lemon. It's a thyme, but most of the thymes do stick around. You can even go and harvest your thyme in the winter as long as you can get out there into your garden. It's not covered in snow. You can use all your herbs all year round, as long as they're things like rosemary, of course, are not hardy here, but the ones that are hardy, the oreganos, and parsley will stay to a point. But these are considered our ground covers in the winter for interest. And mosses create their own interest. When you're going hiking through the woods and you look, it's just beautiful to see the lichens and the mosses, and they each have their own clumping format and where they're growing. Look at all the birds, berries, and seeds around us. And even though it is a stark beauty of winter, we still see birds out of our window, icicles perhaps on some of the branches, and a lot of interest in our gardens. So don't be a one-season wonder. Try to spread your gardening year to last for all 4 seasons, and I think you'll enjoy your yard a lot better. So I have the resources here. I'm going to flash that page up here for those of you that wanted to copy any of these. But there's a whole host of books and information at the libraries, also are online. But this is just to get you started thinking a little bit about the plants that we use in the wintertime to help get our yards through and get us through that kind of slow, more sedate time of year. So anyway, that's us for today. Thank you for having me, and I hope you all have a great fall and winter.